from the BBC World Service in association with ABC and All India Radio. This is Stumped.
Hello and welcome to Stumped, your intercontinental hit of news, features and debate from the quirky world of cricket. I'm Alison Mitchell in Birmingham after a run of games in the 100 competition, and that continues to pull in bigger crowds than women's domestic cricket has ever seen in this country. And India's Jemimah Rodrigues has been lighting up the event in the hot run of form. Whether the diversity of the crowds and new fans coming into the men's competition are matching the expectations set out at the start of the 100, well, we'll only know that at the end. And, of course, where it leaves men's red ball cricket is an even hotter debate now in England after the men's team had a dismal start to the Test series, which, Charu, I'm sure you will want to pick up on. But we say hello to Jim first.
Ali, hello from Sydney. Jim Maxwell here. And we're still revelling in the constriction of lockdown. So exciting. At least we've got the Olympics to watch, and that's been gold for Australia so far. So that's had a lot of inspiration for many Australians, and I think quite a few New Zealanders too. They've been doing pretty well.
Well, I think I'll save the bragging rights for the Test match for just a couple of days later for now. But hey, it's good to be back home again. I'm Charu Sharma for All India Radio in Bangalore, which means, of course, plenty of golf and tennis and, well, rain too, because we're still in the middle of the monsoon. The focus, of course, has shifted cricket-wise to the Test matches, India v England. But if I may dare suggest that the Olympics are still centre stage because of the few medals that India have won, including, of course, the very elusive hockey bronze, which came after 41 years. That's evoked a lot of nostalgia and nationalism and really has got the country together.
Yeah, Jim, I'll mention just at the start, because I'm sure it may change, Great Britain are just above Australia in the medals table at the moment. I think the same number of golds as I speak, but maybe we'll revisit that again later on towards the end of the Olympics. Good to see you both. Now, first up on Stumped, we've got a special guest with us this week, a man who took over 700 wickets and scored almost 7,000 runs for New Zealand. Since his international retirement in 2015, his coaching roles have taken him across the world, including the Indian Premier League, Australia's Big Bash and the T20 Blast. Currently, he's in England in charge of Birmingham Phoenix men's side in the new 100 competition. We welcome Daniel Vettori to Stumped. Dan, good to see you.
Hi guys, I'm very good.
Really good to have you with us. I was in Edgbaston for, well, Birmingham Phoenix, your team chasing down, or the biggest chase in the tournament so far. Do you think you're hitting your straps at the right time?
Yeah, I think it's obviously taken a little while to get used to the format, but I think we played on an incredible wicket, and I think that's probably been the turning point for us, is getting back to Edgbaston and playing on a surface like that. I think we've seen round the tournament so far, there's been a couple of tricky wickets, and I think that's made it difficult, along with people getting used to the format. But to play on a good wicket under light, it felt like an amazing game of cricket, and I think probably one of the best games of the tournament so far.
How have you found the format from a coaching perspective, getting used to that?
I really like it. I think particularly from a batting perspective, I think it seems like it should be so simple, but having the runs and the balls and the countdown, I think has assisted us in our chases. I think it's made it really clear and simple for our young batsmen. And Chris Benjamin has only played 2 games for Warwickshire, I think, and he's come in and he looks like an old pro. And listening to him talk, he says he understands what he has to do so easily because of the 100-ball format. And it's been quite refreshing to hear someone say that. So I think we've really enjoyed it. I think at times when you're bowling and talking to Mo, it's a real rush. So sometimes things get away from you. There's been a lot of, I suppose, remembering you've got to change ends, or you've got to remembering you've got to swap ends. So I think there's a lot of getting used to, but overall the guys and our coaching staff has been really positive about the format.
Yeah, and on Chris Benjamin, I mean, one of the standouts of the 100 is the way the focus is on, one game a night, and performances that we've seen from him get elevated. They get the spotlight. I mean, where did he come from? I gather, did Moeen have a big part in bringing him into the side?
Yeah, I wish you could see our text messages around the recruitment of Chris Benjamin. It was, who's Chris Benjamin? That's sort of how it started. We knew he was at Warwickshire. It was Mo. Mo played him in a second game, so Mo must have been in build-up from injury or coming back for some reason. And he said that Chris Benjamin didn't get many runs, but when he bowled to him, he felt threatened. And he said, I know that feeling as a spin bowler, that there's a batsman there who at some stage can take you down. And obviously we'd had a lot of injuries, and most teams had a lot of injuries, so there were a lot of players who you probably would have looked at before the likes of a Chris Benjamin were gone. So we basically just took took a risk. And then the first warm-up game, he reverse swept Marchant Delanga for 6, and we were pretty happy with our decision after that.
Dan, it's Jim Maxwell in Sydney. Just talking about the pandemic, you've been working with Bangladesh as their spin bowling coach, but because of the pandemic, it's made travelling difficult. What impact have the restrictions had on your work?
Oh, it's been awesome. I haven't had to work. Just have to stay at home. So I'm forced to be at home. It's the longest I've ever been at home since cricket started. So about 18 months. And this opportunity came around a little while ago, but sort of my family was like, it's time for you to go. So it's been nice.
Been at home long enough.
Yeah. It's been nice for someone like myself to be forced to stay at home. But on the flip side of that, to be back involved with the cricket team, to be back involved with some really experienced players, the likes of Mo Ali or Kane Williamson, but also to see those young guys again, and the Chris Benjamins and sort of Will Smeed, to see 19, 22-year-olds come into the game and understand what they need to do. It's a really satisfying part of coaching. One
of the major topics seems to be mental well-being of the players, and it's come to the fore again this week with Ben Stokes taking a break from cricket. What's it like for you as the coach? Have you struggled at all?
Well, because it is my first time back into it, I haven't because I'm excited to be here. I think the difference for me is that New Zealand has had no restrictions and we've been able to do what we want for a long period of time. And now to come to England and the mask wearing, the constant COVID testing, it does get tiresome. And so for me to only be here for a couple of weeks, and you compare that to the guys who've been to the IPL, been in international bubbles, and now, particularly for the England guys, seeing the country doing whatever they want, I think that is difficult for them, and it's a real challenge because the guys with families have to ask their families to be under the same sort of restrictions as them. So I can see how it can really build up on guys, and I can understand. And I think after being here for a little bit of time, start to empathise with these players who've potentially done it for 18 months. It can be pretty full on, and it doesn't feel like it's going to relent in the near future. So I think it's going to be a huge challenge for administrators around how they deal with players wanting to come in and out of bubbles for their mental well-being.
Yeah. Hi, Dan. This is Charu from a city you may be somewhat familiar with, Bangalore. You just mentioned the fact that it's been around for a long time. It's not likely to go away quickly enough. Do you think there should now be a sort of a long-term plan in place to prepare people about how it may be in the future, or should we just muddle along week after week or fortnight after fortnight?
Really, really good question. And I think when you go from country to country, the rules change. It makes a difference to have a constant. And so for ICC or whoever is going to regulate this, it makes it tricky that, like I said, they go from country to country. So sadly, I think we will muddle along and we will just have to deal with the law of the land as players go from country to country and bubble to bubble. We could play a lot more cricket in New Zealand. That'd be nice. We'd be happy to take everyone. But yeah, very, very difficult scenario. And you see it on ground, and you see how hard the likes of the ECB and the 100 Ball Committee are working to make this all enjoyable for the players. I think in the back of their mind, they still realise that they can't just expect players to just run out there and just go from hotel to ground. But I don't know the quick solution for it all.
Yeah, well, no easy solution, that's for sure. But Dan, early this summer, we saw New Zealand win the World Test Championships at the expense of another top team, I might add. But what do you think has been the driving force in getting NZ right to the top of a very important championship, but that was the first time?
Well, first, I mean, it's a lot of pride for not only ex-players, but also I think the country. I think I've never seen so many people with the lack of sleep as they tried to follow 6 days of test match cricket. So it was an amazing feeling to see Kane and the team win that. If you ask the sort of, I suppose, the origins of New Zealand's test success, it does go back to the likes of Mike Hesson and Brendan McCullum and Bruce Edgar, who was convener of selectors at the time. And I think what they did is they started to consistently select teams. And I think if you look at New Zealand test teams over the years, there's been a lot of ins and outs. There's been players play 1 or 2 tests and then be discarded. And what Brendan and Mike did was they found out what their best 11 was or best 12, and then they continued to pick them irrespective of form. And that bred a real culture around the team that the management backed you, and that stopped players being selfish, for want of a better word, and in regards to they were always just looking for their own performance. They weren't worried about the team. And you saw that sort of permeate its way through everyone involved. And now you hear Kane talk around the similar sort of things around consistency of selection, consistency of people around the group, so everyone understands their role, everyone has clarity about what they're supposed to do, and all that leads to being in a really fun environment. And I think that's the way I hear Kane talk, is that because everyone knows their role, everyone understands what they need to do, they're really excited to play Test cricket for New Zealand. And so for the last 5, 6, 7 years, we've seen a really special group of players out there, led by that bowling group. I think if you really come down to it, it's that fast bowling group has been exceptional, and they've been backed up by Kane and Ross Taylor's runs, Tom Latham's runs, and that just leads to a really successful New Zealand team who rightly are top of the world at the moment.
Do you sense that players appreciate that as well? I mean, when we're looking at the 100 being another short form tournament added to the global cricketing calendar, do you think players still appreciate and aspire to that longevity of making your name in the international arena versus the shortest form domestically?
I think it's a bit of both. I think we have to acknowledge that there's a lot of young players who are coming into a cricketing landscape that really rewards the short format, and so the short format becomes aspirational, which there's nothing wrong with. And you see the opportunity to play in the likes of 100 with some of the best players in the world. You hear them talking about the IPL or the Big Bash, and so therefore guys get excited about that. But I still think there's enough players within these environments that get really excited about international cricket as well. And so when you hear Mo or Liam Livingstone talk about the English environment, and Kane, Adam Milne, Finn Allen talk about the New Zealand environment and what it means to win for your country, I still think that probably supersedes all the franchise cricket at this moment. But I think what players desperately want is sort of a combination of both, where they can feel like they are involved in a national team, but they are able to play in these franchise-based tournaments. And so having a clear calendar and the ability for players to map out a year or 2 years, or even for coaches and fans, I think that's what the game desperately needs.
Dan, thank you so much for joining us on Stumped. Good luck with Birmingham Phoenix.
Thanks very much, guys.
That's Daniel Vettori, head coach of the Birmingham Phoenix men's team, and of course former New Zealand captain, joining us on Stumped.
From the BBC World Service, this is Stumped on All India Radio.
Well, it has been quite a week for English cricket. First, it was announced that Ben Stokes would be taking an indefinite break from cricket to prioritise his mental well-being. And England captain Joe Root just simply said, "I just want my friend to be okay." Then it was announced that the England men's tour of Bangladesh in September would be postponed. We're told because of, quote, the impact of COVID and a packed cricket calendar. And of course, what that does do is enable England players to be available for the conclusion of the IPL, as the calendar might not be so packed for that. That's all with the backdrop of the series against India, which got underway this week. And England collapsed abysmally on the opening day with the bat, losing 7 for 45 to be all out for just 183 in their first innings. Now, Jim, England's batting travails aren't new. I mean, yes, they're missing Ben Stokes, but the inability for batters to make big first innings scores does feel more like the longer-term product of the system here in England at the moment, rather than, a one-off due to missing one key player.
Well, he is a key player. There's no doubt about that. He's an inspiration to the team, and he's a match winner. So I don't know how you replace a fella like that, particularly when some of those who are around him aren't what I would imagine guaranteed long-term places in the side. I worry more about Joe Root perhaps than Ben Stokes, who hopefully will be refreshed. But Joe bears so much of a burden as captain because he's got to make all the runs apart from anything else. And another wearing series of perhaps defeat against India is bound to have some impact on his state of mind. So that is a concern as we move ahead. And I do fear a bit for him and how he manages all of this as we look around and see players in bubbles and starting to make noises about not coming if the families can't come to Australia. All these distractions around the game because players are in such an environment now where everything seems to be unnatural and constricted.
The cricket calendar is so busy, so much is asked of these international players who also want to play in the domestic leagues as well. And that, Charu, brings me to the postponement of the Bangladesh tour for England's men, which of course does give an opportunity for players to play in the IPL, which will pick up again in September. I mean, we're told that it was a mutually agreed postponement between the Bangladesh board and the ECB, but do you think there's something sort of more in it than that, given that it does allow players to play in the IPL? And, as one day the ECB hope that India players might feature in the 100, of course.
Well, it does sound very convenient, doesn't it? I'm sure Bangladesh will feel a little upset because, an English tour could certainly help their board and get more attention to cricket in Bangladesh. And they're doing pretty well against a certain team playing there right now. So they'll be hoping to take England on as well. But yeah, and I believe Morgan's already confirmed to KKR that he will captain them in the remainder of the IPL. So the only positive aspect is the fact that, this year it seems to be all about the World T20. And the IPL, of course, is the premier T20 tournament. So I'm sure the players don't mind the IPL instead of any other tour, because they then can assure themselves of match practice at the highest possible level. And, of course, they will have to go back to their teammates and reset. But it does seem that was what fired this decision of not going as a singular team to Bangladesh, where the competition may or may not have been good. But if you play the IPL, you're assured of a very high standard of T20 cricket, and maybe that will help, at least individually, if not as a national team, for the World T20 to follow.
Well, that's all we've got time for this week here on Stumped on All India Radio. So my thanks to Charu, Sharma, Jim, Maxwell, and of course to you all for listening. Don't forget you can keep in touch with us throughout the week. On Twitter, we're at BBCWS Sport. Use the hashtag BBC Stumped so we see your message. In the meantime, stay safe and we'll see you next week. Bye-bye.
Stumped is a BBC sport production for the BBC World Service in association with the Australian Broadcasting Corporation and All India Radio.